Good morning or good day, depending on where you are. My name is Brian Wickman. I'd like to welcome you to the second part of Introduction to Teaching Authentic Direct Instruction. As you may recall, after joining us for last week's session, I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the National Institute for Direct Instruction, NIFTY, based here in Eugene, Oregon. Thank you for giving us your time today to attend what I hope is a very informative and exciting webinar on teaching authentic direct instruction. I think at this time, I'll just like to turn it over to Tamara Bressi, our trainer for today. And why don't you take it away, Tamara?
Great. Thanks, Brian. That was short and sweet. And yes, I'll reintroduce myself as Brian opened up for us. Tamara Bressi, currently implementation manager for the National Institute for Direct Instruction, several years as a classroom teacher, teaching preschool on up through high school in a variety of different settings, general education settings, as well as special education settings. I've had the opportunity to support direct instruction implementations and programs across the US, as well as other countries such as the UK and Australia, as well as on the island of Guam, and had the opportunity to support direct instruction implementations also in Africa. And I tell you that not because, ooh, look at me travel, but I tell you that because direct instruction works, and it works in a variety of settings with variety of students, students who come from very literacy-rich backgrounds, as well as students who literally sit on rocks in order to learn. So there is my soapbox and my yay go DI, because I've seen it work across the country, and again, in and out of the country with a variety of students. I would like to just take a moment again to acknowledge you all and tell you good for you. You keep digging in, you keep showing up for your students every single day in the midst of unbelievable challenges. I honor you for that, I respect you for that, and we are out to support you in whatever way, shape, and form that we possibly can. So I also would like to acknowledge you and thank you for coming back, those of you who were with us last week. And we'll start out here just with a little bit of review. So like the last time, we will share some information with you. Whoa, back up the boat a little bit. I introduced myself, Brian introduced him. I forgot to introduce the other name you see on the slide or in a black box here, Rochelle Davison. You wanna pop on for just a second? How could I forget it? So sorry, darling. Rochelle Davison is the Director of Training for the National Institute for Direct Instruction, superb DI trainer, has also worked as an implementation manager, and we were pod buddies when we both taught in our local public school. We go way back, and if you don't know her now, I do think it should be on your bucket list to get to know her. She incredibly supportive, professionally and personally. Rochelle, you just want to say a quick hi there?
Good morning, good afternoon to you all, and welcome to our webinar.
All right, thank you. Rochelle will be behind the scenes for us, and every once in a while she'll pop up and have her face shown and do some things with me, just as you saw her do. We are using we'll use slides, lesson scripts, and student material to move through our topic today. We will have an opportunity towards the end to have questions from you to see if there's anything out there that you've got that burning question you'd like to answer or you need answered. We'll also be using the polling feature on Zoom in order to hear directly from you. It's really difficult in a webinar setting. I don't see anybody, but I feel you're out there. And it's difficult to interact. So we have created some polls for you so we can have some of that interaction even in this type of a setting. Another option for you today to interact with our webinar is to send questions through the Q&A box. I'm sure by now you all are familiar with how the Q&A box works. If you just look for the Q&A. and type in your question. Rochelle and Brian are behind the scenes right now, even as we speak, looking for your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as they can. Another way to pose questions is to send them to info@nifty.org. And again, we will get back to you and help you with whatever it is you're curious about. If you have questions about structuring distance learning in your school, if you have questions about delivering distance learning, the big picture, or how do you get your parents involved and student engagement, all things particular to the phase of education we see ourselves in or find ourselves in right now, Brian can give you information about how to subscribe to Nifty's YouTube channel, where we have done previous webinars on those specific topics. So again, let's use those methods to interact with us as we get going. So every good webinar has an agenda. You have to know where we're at and what we're doing. So we'll start with introductions, and we did start a little bit already with introducing the Nifty staff. I'm going to walk you through a quick walkthrough of materials, what you should have, what you need for today, remind us all about our session goals, and then move on through our agenda as you see up here. I will do a quick brief debrief of what we did last week, and then move us forward and finish out our agenda. So let's get reacquainted, just a quick reacquaintance. Rochelle's going to launch a poll, and we would just like to know if you're joining us today as one of these school personnel. So you see the poll that's just been launched in front of you. And go ahead, if you will, play with us here and see who we've got. Great, thank you for being so quick. It really helps things move smoothly as you answer these poll questions. We'll have a few as we go through our time together. Great. We're just going to share the results there. Is there mostly?
Yes. People are responding so quickly. Thank you so much. We have all of the attendees reporting so far that they have attended part 1. That's fantastic. Welcome back. And then the majority of folks attending are teachers. We have about 20% coaches and about 14% site leaders, a couple of other specialists and teaching assistants.
Sweet. Well, welcome back. And also so glad that you were able to join us last week and that you've come back to continue and finish out how and why direct instruction is as efficient and effective as it is. One thing to note as we move through the webinar together, that you all are muted. It's a default setting just so that we don't get lots of background noise and disrupts what we're trying to do or keeps folks from hearing clearly. All right, thank you for filling out that poll so quickly. And now here are the materials that you'll need. Now you'll see there are 2 boxes that are highlighted in red. Those are the boxes, or those are the materials that we will focus on today specifically. So if you have your Nifty handout packet, and it should have on the front page this one that says signals on the front, and then towards the end of our time together we will want to take a look at the tour of resources. So those are the 2 things to have out and about available today, and I also will be showing them on our PowerPoint. Also, it might be helpful if you had a piece of paper and notes, if you'd like to take notes as we go along. Just know as well, like Brian did the last time, he sent out the PowerPoint, the 3 on the slides, so that you can have reference to the information without having to take gobs of notes while we go through our time together. And we'll do that again today after our session is over. Brian will send out the recording as well as the handout that follows the PowerPoint. So just know that that's coming again, and I hope it worked for you the last time. So check, check. We've got that material going. Look at us getting through that agenda. Let's review what our goals are for our session. We want to make sure that by the time you are done with us in just a little over an hour now, an hour and 20 minutes, my, how time flies when you're having fun with your best folks. We want to make sure that at the end, you've got a working knowledge about the rationale behind direct instruction curriculum, that you know what makes it tick, and that you understand the key principles and the delivery techniques of direct instruction programs. Those two things are our goals, and we at the end will check to make sure that we have met those goals. Just know a little pre-correct or it could be a pre-correct. The last time when we were together, we spent a lot of our time talking about the concepts of direct instruction and how they apply to reading and how do they apply to reading at the lower levels. I want to let you know that yes, we used those primarily as an example, reading at the lower levels, but everything that we talked about last week and everything that we're going to talk about today also applies to our math programs, to direct instruction language programs and writing programs, to not only our entry-level programs, but also to those programs that teach older students complex and ever complicated information and skills. So across the gamut, across subjects, from our youngest learners to our oldest learners, these instructional goals of direct instruction apply. And let's do a quick review about what they are. Remembering that students are not placed at their grade level, but they are placed at their performance level, and they're grouped with other students that are at that same level, and they continue at their performance level every day, which is one of the critical features of direct instruction that leads to student success. Another instructional goal in way of review for us is explicitly teaching strategies so students can generalize to a wide range of examples instead of just rote learning. And maybe this will trigger your memory from last week. We talked about if we teach students sight words and we teach them 10 sight words, then all they know are 10 sight words. But if we do a strategy based where they can generalize, for instance, we teach them sounds and blending, and we teach them 10 sounds. What they know is over 350 three-sound words. What they'll know is over 4,000 four-sound words, etc. You get the idea that strategy teaching allows students to generalize into other settings. And all of this is carefully crafted, put into meaningful sequences based on research that's pretty important about how kids learn about an event. So in other words, the structure of what happens first, what happens next, and what happens last. So those are two of instructional goals of direct instruction. Let's take a look at the third one. The goal is to accelerate student learning as their performance and behavior indicates. So being student performance driven allows the instructor to be really sensitive to the student's needs. So closing the gap involves students learning more in less time. And so to promote acceleration is why direct instruction has the components and features that it has. That scripted presentation that we took a look at last time, choral responses and signaling, and followed by individual turns, correcting student mistakes, putting students together in homogeneous groupings. All those are there so that we can accelerate student learning. And as you are remembering last week, we talked about direct instruction principles. Two of the most important principles of instruction as we continue to focus throughout our time together will be effectiveness. That means making sure that all students master the material, and efficiency, making sure that students move through the material at a faster than expected rate. Now, we've got to have those two walking hand in hand. And with those two, effectiveness and efficiency walking hand in hand, then students' performance will greatly exceed their historical academic performance in the past. So some of the components that we've talked about and will talk about apply to effectiveness and efficiency, and you'll see that as we move through our time together. So far, so good, my friends. Just a quick review of where we left off, and here's where we're going. We started and ended last time talking about the design of effectiveness, making sure that all students learn, not just you or you or you, but yes, all of you learn. And we start that by placing students at their performance level, by giving placement tests for the program that they're going to be taught in, so we know exactly what lesson level to put them at. And whenever a new concept is introduced, the teacher says, listen, my turn. The teacher does it first, sets those students up to be successful, and then it's your turn. Once the teacher is modeled, then it's your turn. To keep the program and the design effective, you'll see, and we talked about last time, that eliciting frequent student responses is really important. And we do that by having group responses, everybody answering at the same time for most of the responses throughout a lesson, and how our scripts help us to know when to signal for a group response. And keeping our eyes on the students so we know what they're doing at every step of the way. And if there is a problem, if a student says or responds incorrectly, as maybe they will, right? Then we take a look at correcting the student immediately, again, which is an item that we covered last time, and actually where we left off in terms of our list of effective components. So let's pick up where we left off last time and talk about number 5, high passing criteria. So everybody's got the idea of where we've been, and here's where we're going. When we finish with effectiveness, we'll move in and talk about efficiency. So let's get going on the high passing criteria. So in contrast to some instruction, more conventional instruction, you'll see as we talk about in the next moment or two that direct instruction requires a really high percentage for correct responses than in order to be successful and to proceed through the rest of the program. Now, in many schools and many other curriculums, they accept and would say that 70% correct is a passing score. But because we emphasize mastery every step of the way, we want to make sure that our students are at mastery. So we have a much higher passing score. Well, how high? You might be saying, well, I'm so glad you're so inquisitive and you've asked yourself that, because let's talk about how high. On individual turns, we're expecting that students are 100% on individual turns. Well, how can they be 100% on individual turns? Remember, whatever is new, the teacher models first. And remember that students are answering as a group first. And if there's an incorrect answer, the teacher fixes the answer, firms the group. All that happens before individual turns. And so yes, 100% on individual turns is achievable. If there's been a mistake, again, the teacher firms it, and that means that by the end of the lesson, by the end of the time together, students should be 100% on all tasks. When we're looking at independent work, we're looking at 85% first time correct on independent work. Whew, boy, this is a lot, isn't it? And it's achievable because we teach to mastery at every step of the way. When we're looking at mastery tests, we're looking at 90% first time correct on mastery tests. And the rate of errors should be so low that it allows you to move through a lesson in the allotted time, given that the allotted time is enough to complete a lesson. And we'll talk about scheduling towards the end of our time together. So this level of mastery really provides for a solid foundation for students when they learn new concepts and skills. Because each skill is covered earlier in lessons, it lays the foundation for everything that's coming afterwards. Now, if a student has difficulty, on earlier material and is dragged through the program. Have you seen that before? And they are not meeting the passing criteria, you can pretty much expect that they are going to continue to have more difficulty. Gets harder and harder as time goes on. Now, these high placement, or I'm sorry, these high passing criteria really emphasize the need for appropriate placement. If a student is not placed properly in the program, they will not be able to meet this high level of passing criteria. It could result in repeating lessons multiple times if they're not placed correctly. It could mean, like I just mentioned, students have been drugged through the program while other students are ready to move on. We've got some students who have been not drugged. Oh, that's not a good thing. They've been dragged through the program. And by the time the end of the school year comes around, there is no reason to throw a party, right? Maybe they've gone through the prescribed amount of curriculum, but they haven't mastered it. There's no party at the end of that school year. Students who meet this criteria, I will suggest to you and tell you, are very well placed and happy students indeed. Sometimes we get feedback from instructors, parents that say, oh, look, my students at 90% on their mastery test. My students are scoring 85, 90%, 95% on independent work. This work is too easy for them. And we would counter and say, this work, this where your student is right now is a happy, successful, properly placed student, not in curriculum that is too easy and not in curriculum that is too hard. So yay for high criteria, set that bar high and teach to mastery. Now, the last three aspects of the design of effectiveness are closely linked to one another. We've already mentioned incremental increase in the difficulty and complexity. The last time we were together, we talked about judicious review, how it's not just a one and done, but it's a one and let's do it again and let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it next week and don't you forget it. And how the skills and concepts are woven together into more complex applications. So let me show you a graphic that really helps to illustrate these three design elements. If you take a look here at teaching lessons as a mastery staircase, all direct instruction programs are taught with an incremental step design where only 10 to 15% of each lesson is new, which makes, of course, 85 to 90% of the lesson review. So this is actually just, oh, look at that. That was magic, wasn't it? This is actually more complicated than a simple staircase because different tracks introduce new material and they come together to form that increasingly more sophisticated application. And then the rest of the lesson is review and additional practice and application of the skills that were introduced earlier in the program. This incremental design allows students to achieve automaticity and a fluency in the material. For instance, they can read words the fast way. They can do math problems quickly because they have mastered what has come before it. It also means that students will be able to make the next step if they've mastered everything up to the current step. Let's take that and talk about it a little bit more. So if we take a look up here and we see, you saw that the green just appeared. If we take a look at that step being learning, if students are on step 5, for instance, or let's just say lesson 5, and they have all the skills that were taught to that point, they should be able to learn that 10 to 15% new material that is represented in the next lesson. So when they get to step 6 or lesson 6, no problem because they've learned everything in lesson 5. But If a student doesn't learn everything in lesson 5, or if you will, on step 5, then there is a problem. That means that the student will have to learn, hang on, there we go. If a student hasn't learned everything on the previous step or the previous lesson, and they go to the next lesson anyway, not only do they bring that amount that they didn't learn with them, that 10 to 15% from lesson 5, they're bringing now to lesson 6, it increases the amount of new learning that student needs to do. So now we're asking a student who didn't master something at lesson 5 to master more material at the same rate other students who were brought to mastery are learning a lesser amount of material. And the problem can compound over time. So it can't just be the sun goes down, the sun comes up, and I turn the page, I'm going on to a new lesson. It has to be have the students mastered everything that they have been taught in this current lesson. Now, I'll give you a little quick definition for mastery. How do you define mastery? We've been talking about, but how do I know if it has occurred? Well, a student has mastered something if they can do whatever you've asked them to do as easily as say his or her own name, right? So you saw that when we introduced ourselves today, for instance, none of us, of the three of us, had to pause and say to one another, hey, what's my name, right? We had this mastery of our name. We could say it as quite easily, of course. If you are teaching and you say to yourself, I wonder if my students know that. I wonder, did they get it? I would suggest to you then the answer is no. If you have to ask yourself that question, the answer is no, because students who are at mastery will do whatever you've asked them to do as easily as say their own name. Now, if a student is seriously misplaced, then it doesn't matter how well the program is designed. It doesn't matter how great your delivery skills will be, because it makes that next step for that child too great to take. Right? So that being a illustration of mastery and how that incremental design builds and builds and builds, let's take it one step further and let's take a look at a math example and apply what happens or what could happen if students do not master items and new material taught in previous lessons. So what you see up here is an illustration or as an example from Connecting Math Concepts, Comprehensive Addition, and this is level D. CMC is a 6-level series that accelerates the math learning performance of students in grades K or reception through grade 5 or year 6, depending on which country you live in. Levels A through levels A through F are suitable for gen ed students, as well as also for it's highly effective with at-risk students as well. Connecting Math Concepts does more than just expose students to connections, as you would probably guess by now. It really stresses understanding, and it introduces concepts really carefully, and then it weaves them together through the program. Once something is introduced, it never, ever goes away. It often becomes a component part of an operation that has several steps, as math is prone to do, correct? So, what I want you to do right now, that was a little bit about CMC, and this we're popping in here at level D and lesson 11. What I'd like you to do right now, real quickly, just on a piece of paper and a pencil that you might have quite handy, is jot down the pre-skills students would need to have in order to solve for K. And while you do it, Rochelle's going to be making her own list. So ready and go. Just quickly write them down. Great. I bet you got a couple down already. Thanks for playing. You guys are fast. Looks like Rochelle's going to take about 5 more seconds. And she is done. So Rochelle's going to share with us the pre-skills that she wrote down that a student would need to have in order to solve for K. And what I'd like you to do is take a look at the list that you created or started to create. And if what Rochelle says is something that you have on your list, go ahead and put a star on it. If something that Rochelle says is not on your list, go ahead and write it down. So Rochelle, give us what did you write as the pre-skills for a student to solve for K?
So I picked out a couple of things. Basic reading skills. They have to be able to read the problem itself. Looking at more or less, knowing about what to do if something is more or less than something else. And then also subtraction skills with their double-digit subtraction.
Great. That's a great start on the pre-skill students would need to have in order to solve for K. I bet that many of you out there wrote a similar list to Rochelle. Thank you, dear. And maybe even were able to add 1 or 2 items. Now let's walk through how CMCD teaches students to approach a word problem in its most simple form. So this is a lesson, again, from level D. And just a little bit of background before we start walking through how CMC teaches word problems. So students work with number families. They learn about number families, and number families act as an organizational tool for fact memorization, for solving word problems, for finding missing numbers in tables. Families are shown on a straight arrow, like you see right here. And the first 2 numbers in a family are called small numbers. And the number at the end of the arrow or to the right is called the big number. So students use number families in solving word problems. Many students, I being one of them, struggle solving word problems because they don't have a strategy for separating the information given in a word problem and how to compute it to get the answer. Now, I, having learned this strategy, can not break out in a profuse sweat when presented with a word problem. So students learn to use these word problems to create number families and solve for the missing number. Now, if the big number of a family is missing, and remember we said the big number is at the end, if the big number of a family is missing, students learn that they start with the small numbers and add to figure out the missing number. If a small number is missing, students learn that they start with the big number, they go backwards down the arrow and subtract to find the missing number that way. They also learn that if you have at least 2 numbers, you can solve for the missing number. All right, so that being just a very quick background information on number families and the terminology of big numbers, small numbers. Let's take a look through now at our lesson. Students are told, this is an actual script, so remember the teacher says what's in blue. You're going to make number families. Okay, number families. So students need to know number families. And remember what we're doing here. These are all pre-skills that students need to know in order to be able to do a problem such as this. Number families. All right, you're going to make number families and then figure out what the letter in the family equals. Touch A. Read the sentence. Great. So far, so good. Our students are reading the sentence. Which number? Now we have another pre-skill. Which number? They have to know which number tells. They have to know which number tells something, and they have to know the concept of more or less. Got to know number families. Got to know which number tells and about more or less. And then we see as we move through to the 3rd bullet here under part or step B, circle 17 and write it as the first small number. Oh, I see another pre-skill there, right? The first small number. So they have to circle 17 and they have to understand the idea of the first small number. Read the sentence without the circled numbers. Students read the sentence and they are told to put K and 18 in the number family and check their work. And so they see that this is what they should have had. So students also need to know the difference between the big number and a small number. So you see, not only did what you identified on the previous slide with Rochelle, but now we add even more pre-skills to it. So you can see, yes, that if any of these component skills are missing, the whole structure then is precarious and is really set up for quite a tumble. Now let's see what students do with this information. After they've had this oral review, the instructor asks them to go back to problem A, and they write the column problem and they figure out what K equals, and they write the number in the family. So let's think about pre-skills again. Got to know more or less. We have to identify which number tells more. We need to know number families. We need to know small number versus big number. We need to know the idea of the first small number. We need to know and be able to apply the rules about when to add and when to subtract. We've got to know basic subtraction facts, and we have to know column, how to set up a column subtraction problem. Again, if any of these skills are missing, you can see it's going to preclude students from coming up with the answer as to what K equals. Let's take a look a little bit down the road now. We're still in CMC level D, but now we've jumped to lesson 51. And this is just to show you again the progression of that skill, how we have to bring to mastery every component skill. So when they get to more complicated word problems, such as the ones you see in front of you, they're able to solve. Where we're at now in lesson 51, all these problems name two people. In some problems, the sentence that tells how to make the number family is the question. In some problems, another sentence tells how to make the number family. So look at problem 1. June rode a bike 156 miles farther than Ginger rode. Ginger rode 97 miles. How many miles did June ride? Students are taken through an oral review of which sentence is the sentence that tells them how to set up the number family. So students identify that this first sentence, June rode a bike 156 miles farther than Ginger rode, that tells them how to set up the number family. And you can see here that June is the big number, Ginger's a small number, and then students work the problem from there. Now, least students develop a misrule and think that every time the first sentence is what tells you how to set up a word problem. You can see that it's mixed up a bit. In problem number 2, it's the last sentence. How many more apples did Mike eat than Fran? And you see that Mike is the big number, Fran is a small number, and students set up to solve for that. The same as in problem number 3. Students first identify which sentence is the sentence that tells them how to set up the problem, and then they go back and put in their numbers. Once they have the oral review, they then go back and work it just as you see in front of us right now. So, pausing here. reiterating the fact that as you think of the staircase and that incremental design, you can see how we can take a tumble if students have not learned all the various pre-skills and more that we identified leading up to this word problem. It's really great to learn this system because now I don't look at problems like this and say, I don't care how many miles June rode. So June probably cares, Ginger cares, but I don't care. Now I can look at a problem like this and using that strategy of how to solve word problems that is taught in connecting math, I can now solve these problems. Yay. I can help my grandchildren with their math. Let's talk about the benefits, continue to talk about the benefits of a direct instruction program and their design principles, keeping in mind that staircase idea and having to be at mastery before we move on to the next. So in our direct instruction programs, we can say that students at mastery, that the design of these programs is such that students who are at mastery will learn what is in the next lesson. And we can say too that the design shows us that students not at mastery will get further behind or farther behind. We can also say this, ooh, hallelujah, give me a happy dance and a that students retain information over the break. Now you would document at the end of the school year or at the end of the break, here is where students left off. And at the beginning of the next school year, after say a summer break, that students would only start about 3 lessons back from where they left off at the end of the school year. We dust them off and get them going again. No wholesale, it's the beginning of the year, you know, they didn't read or do math over the summer. We better start them back 20 lessons, 25 lessons. Well, we do not expect a summer slide because students have been taught to mastery every step of the way. And what they've been taught to mastery, they retain. Yay, team. Whew. It's not 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. Let's continue talking about the benefits of DI programs and those design principles. Now, teaching to mastery allows us to make reliable predictions about progress. So when teachers teach to mastery, we can very accurately predict where students are going to be in 100 school days from now, 200 school days from now. DI assumes that the students who meet the entry level requirements for the program and who are taught appropriately, which means taught to mastery and on schedule, they're going to respond in perfectly lawful ways and will be reading at a predicted level by the end of, say, kindergarten year or reception year. If they are not taught to mastery, we really can't draw any conclusions because we would have to go back and reteach. Another design principle is that student performance drives instruction. The instructor uses this information, what she's getting back continuously from those group responses, from that written work, from the independent work. Teacher uses that to judge the rate of the presentation. Is it appropriate? Can I go a little faster? Do I need to slow it down and vary my think time more depending on what I'm asking my students? Now, if they haven't mastered what's being taught, as we talked about last time, the instructor corrects the mistake and then repeats a part of that exercise. If quite a few students miss the item, the teacher might repeat an entire exercise as opposed to just that specific part where the student made a mistake. It's performance driven, one of the big design principles of direct instruction programs. Your turn now, my friends. Poll number 2. Tell us, true or false? As Rochelle is going to be has launched this poll. Students taught to mastery will learn what's next. True or false? Go on to your second question. Students not at mastery will get farther behind. True or false? Third question. Students taught to mastery will need to start the new school year 25 lessons back from where they left off.
Great. People are responding.
I love this group. Where have you been all my life?
Processing those 3 questions. We have about half the people in, so we'll wait just a little bit.
Appreciate the carefulness that they're reading.
Yes.
All right, what have we got?
We have for item number 1, when thinking about the benefits of the DI program design, students taught to mastery will learn what's next. And we have a true, true, true on that.
Yay, kiss your brains, my friends. Do that right there.
When thinking about the benefits of the DI program design, students not at mastery will get further behind. And that is also true, true, true. Our pollers are weighing in.
Smart, smart, smart.
The design of DI programs guarantees that students taught to mastery will need to start the new year 25 lessons back from where they left off. And this is false. We have, if taught to mastery, they do not need to go back 25 lessons. We'll just go back that 3 lessons you mentioned before, typically.
Awesome. Hey, way to pay attention, my friends out there, and apply those benefits of the DI program design. Great job, smart folks out there. I hope you did kiss your brain because you've been paying very close attention. All right, now let's leave for just a moment effectiveness. That's what we've been focusing on all this time. Now let's move to efficiency. So direct instruction programs, how are they efficient? So here's what we'll do. Now think about this though, and effectiveness is a prerequisite for efficiency. So we must make sure that students master material before we can go on in the program. And we made that point as we walked through the mastery staircase and looked at it applied to math problems. So in reading, for instance, we have to make sure that students are accurate before we can focus on their rate. In math facts, we have to make sure that students can know that they know the basic facts before they can do multi-step programs or multi-step problems. So we'll go through each one of these items with the rest of our time together. Let's talk about efficiency. Students learning faster than expected. Now, homogeneous groups is how we put our students together. That allows for more efficient teaching. The type of material that one student is ready for in the group is the type of the material that the other students are ready for in the group, as well as the type of mistakes a student might make are similar to the same type of mistakes other students in that same group might make. In contrast, if students are not in the same level in their groups, who will the teacher teach to? Will the teacher teach to the higher performing students, and then our students who need more repetition or are struggling get even more lost? Or will the instructor teach to the lower end and we bore the higher end because they know that material? Or without homogeneous grouping, does the instructor shoot for the middle and we have trouble on either end? The more at risk the students are, the more they're going to benefit from smaller groups, and that allows for the instructor to make more individualized choices there. So grouping is homogeneous and it's flexible, and we take a look at putting students in small groups for lower levels of the program or your more fragile learners, and we'll talk more specifically right now. As we take a look at flexible grouping means that where a student starts might not be the same group that student ends in, because the groups are flexible. They can change from one group to another, but the changes are made based on data and analyzing that data. And yes, teacher recommendation is important. The data that is collected through direct instruction programs on mastery and lesson progress are first and foremost. Maybe you've had this opportunity where an instructor might come to you, if you are in a coaching or leadership role, an instructor might come to you and say, John does not belong in my group. And you take a look at John's data, and John's data, reading well, math facts are well, depending on what program you're in, you look at John's data, and what happens is that John's data looks just like all the other students, right? So we have to go a little bit further and find out how to best support that instructor in supporting John, because academically, according to the data, John does belong in that group. So we get a little bit more involved with the instructor to find out how we can support, because academically we're good to go. So flexible grouping. And let's take a look at the third item on efficiency. We've got those students grouped homogeneously. Everybody understands that students can move from one group to another based on performance. We've got them in small groups for the lower levels of the program, like reading K, language K, CMC, level A, maybe DISTAR, another math program, that's a lower level program where students learn math in small groups. Now, let's talk about how to put together the physical environment so that instruction is facilitated at the best that it can be. So we are seating students in the lower levels of the program in small groups again, about 12 students maximum in those small groups. As you can think about, I know the majority of you responded that you were teachers, and even if currently you're not a teacher, perhaps that's how you started in education. Think to your classroom, and you know that what a big difference seating arrangement can be, and it makes a huge difference in the efficiency of instructors. So the setup for a huge difference in the effectiveness of instruction, not instructors, instruction. So the setup for instruction is very different for the lower levels of the DI program than for the higher levels. So the higher levels, we are taught whole class, still homogeneous, with students who have like skills as one another as possible, but it's whole class. Higher levels of the program would be your reading mastery level 2 and above, would be your language level 2 and above. You would look, if you're looking at math, your CMC math groups, level B and above, those are large group, can be taught in a large group setting. Let's take specifically a look here, some specific requirements. Let's take it from the general, hone it down into details here. So taking a look at the lower levels, we're setting up our group for small group instruction. And again, these are some examples that you see on the screen of programs that we consider lower level, just because they're the foundational levels of each of these subjects, and how we would set students up. We want students in a semicircle around the instructor. I think you noticed on a video from last week how that looked. That we want them on chairs without desks in front of them. We don't want anything in between the student and the teacher. So this teacher can reach over and do a quick high five and a quick redirect. So on chairs in front of the instructor. In decoding A, that's corrective reading decoding A, you're generally dealing with older students, 3rd grade, 4th grade and up. Those folks are fine to be seated at desks. The instructor still needs to monitor carefully what is going on, how those decoding A students are performing. Just a little illustration here about what that might look like. You've got your instructor here. and students spread around you in chairs. Now the HP stands for higher performers. The LP stands for lower performers. And here's, or in other words, students who need more of your attention. And the rationale for seating those students who need more of your attention in the center is this. Here you are, you're the teacher, and you are spanning, you are monitoring, you are looking back and forth. The folks in the middle get your attention twice as frequent, don't they? Because you're looking here, oh, there they are, how they doing, paying attention, you're looking here, and then you're going back, and you see how those center folks get twice as much of your attention. Now, what happens if you have a bigger group than this? Oh, good thing you remain inquisitive. You can have small group instruction and have up to 12 folks. And here is how that works. Again, we have our higher performing students out on the wings, still being able to see the the teacher presentation book that the instructor is holding. And you see also these arrows that indicates that the back row is seated in between folks in the front row so that they have a clear view. You don't want the back row, of course, to be right behind somebody in the front row because all they see is the head of the student in front of them. And here's what it looks like in the classroom. Now, this classroom has students on chairs, as you can see in the back, and then students are the first row sitting on the floor. Now, obviously, you have to teach those students how to handle themselves, one in chairs, and how to handle themselves on floors. I've also seen this where the back row of students has one size chairs and the front row of students has smaller chairs. So again, just to facilitate everybody being able to see students or see the teacher presentation book. All right, small group instruction, facilitating that to make your instruction effective. Now let's talk about large group instruction and what programs, as you can see up here, are classified as higher level large group instruction programs. Reading and language 2 and above in our decoding programs, we're looking at level B and above, and in math, again, level B and above. Now, for this setup, students are in desks during instruction. They're in rows and they are in columns because it's best for monitoring. Remember, it's a whole group now. And the instructor moves around the room, seldom presenting from the front of the room, but moving around the room and very closely monitoring students. And here's a visual of that where the teacher's here, but yes, has room to walk up and down the aisles, not just up and down the aisles, but it's really important that the instructor has room to walk behind students. All this helps to facilitate and make instruction effective because the teacher can monitor every student. And as you see here, students who need more frequent monitoring are in the front, and students who can function without as much teacher monitoring in the back. And here's what it might look like in the classroom. You can see in this photo how the instructor has room to walk up and down the aisle and also behind the students. So seating students to facilitate instruction in a large group setting. And nothing is left to chance. Isn't that great? All right, let's take a look now on our list of design of efficiency. We've got choral student responding. Wow, easy for you to say. Choral student responses followed by individual turns. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about how that makes our instruction efficient. Now, we've already discussed the efficiency of choral group responses, right? Remember back, and we touched on it just at the beginning as a review, choral responses versus individual turns, right? And how much more engaged students are during choral responses, and how I can tell as the instructor what each one of my students knows at the same time because they're all answering together. Now, in direct instruction programs, choral responses are frequently followed by individual turns. And here is where you get to have a little bit of playtime with us. We're going to take a look at a video from Corrective Reading Comprehension, level B2. It's lesson 9, keeping in mind choral responses followed by individual turns and how those are efficient. So let's just do a little quick review of COMP for those, which might be all of you, who don't know about the COMP program and what this is all about. So in comprehension, the development of skills in the comprehension program progresses from comprehending oral comprehension or oral language to comprehending written material. In B2, which is where we'll pick up on this video, is designed to teach students to understand what they read. Can I get another hallelujah? Yay. Do you have students who can decode like a house afire, but they can't tell you what they've read? The comprehension program helps with that. It teaches 6 skills. It teaches reasoning skills, it teaches information skills, it teaches vocabulary, sentence analysis, it teaches basic comprehension and writing. And each one of these skills is taught through specific tracks. Now we're going to zero in here on the information track. Students who don't have an adequate amount of, or an adequate store of common information are at a really big disadvantage when they read selections that assume they have this background information. Typically, these students don't know basic classifications. They don't know the names of body systems or body organs, and they don't know the basic rules about how things work. Moreover, they lack a systematic method of retaining this new information because they're unpracticed on how to organize groups of very related tasks. Our comprehension program attacks that. The tracks that are in the information skills have to do with body systems, body rules, and economic rules. And the body systems track, as you see in front of us here, teaches the names and parts of major body systems. And it also provides students with successful experience in mastering a group of related facts. Now, in B1, the level previous to this, students learned to identify the skeletal system, the digestive system, the muscular, the circulatory, the respiratory systems. Wow, yes, good stuff, important stuff. In level B, where we're picking up right now, the students learn about the nervous system, and which includes the brain and nerves and the spinal cord in the B2 level in the body systems track. So let's take a look at what we're going to see on this video, and I'm going to set you up for what you do while you watch. So we come into this lesson right here in this bullet. Name the body part that connects the brain to all of the body. So it's a whole group. You'll be watching students who are in middle school doing this COMP program, this lesson 9. The instructor will go on to name the organ that lets you think and feel, get ready, and then on to individual turns. And as you are watching, I want you to be thinking about the function of presenting. What function does presenting individual turns have after group responses? So, with the power of Zoom and being able to get us to the right spot. Whoops, that didn't work. Hang on. All right. All right, verify for me that you can see the lesson. Yes, Rochelle? Can you see the video?
I can see the video.
Ah, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. All right, you have your jobs out there. You're going to watch and watch the group responses and then watch the individual turns that are coming next. And what are the functions of individual turns after group responses? Here we go.
In the body part that connects the brain to all parts of your body. Think. Get ready.
Spinal cord.
Name the organ that's let you think and feel. Think. Get ready.
Brain.
Fantastic. You guys really know your body systems. Now,
Whoops, keep going.
individual test time, so pay attention. Name the body system of bones. Lightning. Perfect. Name the body system of nerves. Foster.
Nervous system.
Very good. Name the body system of muscles. Kiana.
Muscular system.
Perfect. Name the body system that changes food into fuel. Jeff.
Digestive system.
I thought I was going to get you on that one. Good job. Name the body.
All right. And let's get you back to the PowerPoint here, and we see the PowerPoint, yes?
Yes.
Ah, thank you, dear. All right. Watching that little snippet, having a group response, and then going to individual turns. This is your turn now. Which of the following are true about presenting individual turns after group responses? Rochelle's going to launch that poll right now. And I know it's going to take you a moment to read through them. Check all that apply. Some multiple. Oh, look at our folks, Rochelle. They're fast and they're big thinkers.
Great. Processing just a little bit longer so people have a little more time to read each of the items.
Absolutely.
People are choosing all that apply.
And what have we got here?
All right, we have all that apply to be true. We're looking at the second one down, using individual turns to verify that the students have mastered the material and are not just mouthing their responses or taking cues from others. We have the third one down, that is true. Use them when you're in doubt on any performance of any student on an exercise. And the last one, if you're waiting until students are firm as a group before moving to individual turns, students are better able to give that accurate, firm response.
Excellent. Thank you, Rochelle. Hey, and here's what I want to say to you folks out there. Many of you last week when we did a poll about direct instruction, have you taught it? Have you been trained? What do you know about it? Many of you answered, I don't know about direct instruction. Hence, that's why I'm here. And look at where you've come. Look at how from last Wednesday to now, you now know the function of individual turns after group responses. That is fabulous. Good work, my friends. Well, that takes us to the next item on efficiency. We're talking about scripts now. Now, again, we talked about scripts just a little while ago. Hang on. When we were talking about effectiveness. Now, those scripts provide clear and consistent wording and examples for students. So scripts are not only effective, they are also very efficient. So here is your turn again. At least you got comfortable in your seat. Here's another opportunity for you. Now, in just a bit, Rochelle will launch a poll. You're going to be asked an individual turn question about using scripts. What we're trying to simulate the best we can on a Zoom platform is a group response through the use of polls, and then move to an individual turn for each of you. So first, we're going to get your juices going by asking you to respond as a group to this prompt. What following ideas could be included when sharing with a peer or a parent the benefits of following a script? Go ahead and launch the poll there, Rochelle. Thank you.
All right, people are carefully reading.
All right.
We'll give just a little more time as people weigh in.
All right, what have we got out there?
We have the first option, scripts keep the language of instruction consistent from day to day. That is one that applies. We know that we would be able to share that solid information with peers or parents. Teacher talk is at a minimum. Yes, that applies here so that there's less confusion, less distraction among students. We keep that consistency in place. That applies. Scripts are efficient for the teacher and students. Absolutely. We have people choosing that as what they would like to share. The sequence and order of tasks have been carefully constructed. Another item that the most people would share with their peers or with their parents. And then also the opportunity for teachers to show showmanship. That was less people said that they would share that with their parents or peers.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being so quick in your responses to the polls. All right. So that one that the scripts allow for teacher showmanship didn't get as much love as the other ones. I understand that. Remember our conversation last time, we talked about how you can still follow a script and be precise in your wording, just as it indicates, and be yourself at the same time. It actually opens up opportunity for you to be more of a show person, because you are not stopping to think about minimal differences. Is this an example? Is this a non-example, etc.? So this is where it's your turn now. So going from group responses, or the best we could in a Zoom platform, generating thoughts for you, what I'd like you to do now individually is what information would you include? Okay, so jot down 3 points you want to be sure to remember about the rationale behind using scripts. What would you share? 3 things. Go. All right, and for the sake of our time and not having dead space, I'm hoping that you at least got started on that list. Maybe you wrote 1 or 2 words down so that you can remember what you would say to a peer, what you might say to a peer as we, after this session, about scripts and why they are efficient and why they are effective. If you didn't get all your points down during a few moments of silence, I would still encourage you to think afterwards and finish that individual turn question. All right, here we are with the design of efficiency still, and we're talking about routines and expectations and how they are explained and they're practiced, and using a reinforcement system to appropriately reinforce student, and how that makes instruction so efficient. One way we do this is through the use of this teacher-student game. It's a tool we use, and we will talk about what that looks like and show you a little video on it as well. In our groups, we have expectations, as I'm sure you do in your groups. And here's an example of rules for group instruction. We want our students to sit tall. The S could also be sit up, could also be stay on task. The T, we say talk big, could also mean track. You want your student to follow the instruction wherever he or she should be looking. You want students to answer on signal, because remembering that gives you the most information about their performance. You want students, of course, to respect others. And so here's a sample of rules. We tell our students, show me star behavior, be a star. And of course, having taught about what each one of these expectations looks like, feels like, sounds like, and what it doesn't look like, feels like, or sounds like. The main part is you've got to teach it. And once it's been taught, how do we reinforce it? Well, you'll remain an inquisitive bunch, and ask yourself that in your head. You can look at the nifty handout packet, and on the nifty handout packet, you will see a document that says teacher-student game, and it's got all the specifics about how to play this game and how to keep it reinforcing while you are teaching your lesson. This is a system where the students should almost always win. Its purpose is to reinforce desired student behavior while discouraging some behavior that is perhaps a little less productive. And it involves setting very explicit expectations, like I showed you: sit tall, talk big, answer together, respect others. Set those explicit expectations beforehand so students know how they will earn points, and telling them how you will earn points as the instructor. Students get points when they follow your pre-taught behavioral expectations, and they get points when they get the answer right the first time. Right? Teacher gets a point if students are not following the expected behavior expectations, but let's be really careful here. A teacher does not get a point if the students answer incorrectly. All right? Teacher gets a point if it's a behavioral error, not if it's an academic error. Okay. As you are giving points to students while you are teaching, we would encourage and advocate that your points are not silent. When you give students a point, it's very specific about why they earned that point, so they know the behavior to continue. Student point, I have everybody sitting tall. Student point, everybody answered together. And are you hearing the everybody part? So making student points contingent on the behavior that you've taught and are expecting. You've got to be really careful there. If you give a student point and the students are not performing at performing the behavioral expectations that you have taught, you're reinforcing behavior you don't want. You want to keep your ratio of reinforcing behavior, reinforcement for behavior, and corrective behavior at a ratio of about 4:1. That's a very reinforcing environment. Students are hearing 4 times more frequently what they're doing well than what they need to be corrected. And even when giving a teacher point, you're going to name that point, not the student. Teacher point, I need everybody sitting tall. Teacher point, I need everybody answering together. In both those situations, with the student and the teacher, you are naming the specific behavior. One that the students should continue, and one that the students should correct. And not only that they should correct it, but how they should correct it. Right? I'm getting a teacher point. I need everybody sitting tall. That gives them the behavior to do. So we're going to watch a video here, and this video will show the instructor who is setting up a quick review of STAR expectations. This instructor has already taught the expectations at the beginning of every lesson, a quick review of them, and then on to the lesson. I'd like you to watch as she does. Apparently I can't talk and share my screen at the same time, or change my screen share at the same time. All right. Tell me, you are seeing the video, I'm pretty sure about that.
Yes.
And thank you, dear. And as you watch this instructor review the student teacher game with with her students, I want you to watch how short and sweet it is. And here we go.
All righty, boys and girls, let's go over the expectations, please. Remember, we want to be STAR students. That S stands for sit tall. Please sit tall, fold your hands, and that will help you focus so that you can learn as much as possible. T stands for talk big. There are a lot of you. I'd like to hear all of your voices. A, answer on signal. We're very good at that. But always make sure you're looking at my finger for when I'm touching, okay, or when I'm tapping. And R, respect others. You all do a very nice job of respecting me and your classmates. So we'll continue to do that today. For our teacher-student game, remember you'll get points when you answer correctly the first time. I'll get points if we forget some of the expectations, okay? All right, guys, let's begin. Please make sure you can see.
All right. A very short and sweet introduction or review of the student teacher game. Do you see how here's what it's about? And it literally took less than a minute to review that with their student, sat down, got right into a lesson. So just an example of how the student teacher game can be used and reinforced as teachers are going through their lessons. Now, we have gone through all the effectiveness components. We have gone through all the efficiency components. It's time for you to show what you know. What are you going to walk away with? It's always good to have a nugget or two or 10 that you walk away from. So one last test of your memory. And if Rochelle will launch the poll. No trick questions on this one. True or false? Ha! You're fast.
Yes. Our
No.
folks are processing quickly those responses today. All right. We have almost everyone in.
Great.
Effectiveness, meaning that all students master the material. We have almost 100% voting true on that one. And efficiency means students learn at a faster than expected rate. Almost everyone processing for true on that one.
Great. So like I said, this is not a trick poll. I wanted to make sure that you were left with the right definitions and the right ideas in your heads as we move and close just this section of our time together. I see what we're looking at in time, in terms of time here. So a quick adjustment on my part will take us right to where we need to be. So great showing what you know. And let's talk about this now. Remember at the beginning of last week and at the beginning of today, we had goals for our session. Do you now have a working knowledge about the rationale behind direct instruction curriculum or curricula? I hope tick that box, yes? Do you have key principles, an understanding of those key principles and delivery techniques of direct instruction programs? Tick that box as well. That's what we've been working on, and that is what you have shown us that you have done as we have gone through our polls together, that you are gaining this information and applying that information. Again, good work, friends. Now, you might be saying to yourself, all right, well, that was somewhat conceptual, got some specifics on items, but what do I do with it? Let's get practical, right? So Brian will send out this handout to you along with the link to the recording. This is a start of the year flow chart. It gives you the practical. What do I do? Well, I'm going to I start with placement testing. And then after I have my placement test, then instructional groups go on. And of course, we have to the right where you might have to say, no, I didn't do that. And then it tells you what to do. Instructional groups, have they all been put into groups that are homogeneous? If not, then this tells you what to do. Let's follow our yes flow. Once we've got students have had their placement test and they've been put into groups, then we go about purchasing the material. Look at how efficient and effective that is, right? It's not purchasing the material, a stab in the dark, I wonder. It's let's get those students placement tested and put into groups. Then we know, right? And then once we have all that in place, then we train teachers to teach those specific groups and those specific programs, and making sure that those groups stay at their instructional level. That's the practical, and let's keep that in mind as we look at the next steps in making that practical application happen. So one thing that we advocate very strongly is that instructors need to be trained in these programs. It's not programs. They're not just pick up the program and teach. The National Institute for Direct Instruction puts on pre-service training throughout school years, very concentrated, of course, in the summer break before the new school starts, but also we do program training throughout the school year. Really essential for student and teacher success. To know what you're teaching. It takes place before instruction begins, and those pre-service sessions where we are learning how to teach a specific program and level concentrate on the first 30 lessons so that instructors have what is needed to complete at least 6 weeks of school. And then during the pre-service training, you'll see the instructor model how a lesson, an exercise should be done, all the techniques that are involved in that. And then you get an opportunity to practice as the teacher without students in front of you, so that when those students are in front of you, you are as smooth and as polished as possible. You get feedback during those pre-service training sessions on how to hone your skills. Well, after you've had pre-service training, we also advocate and supply on-site coaching. Again, another critical feature for student and teacher success. A coach comes alongside your instructors, comes alongside your district personnel in giving feedback on instruction and student skill level. Always the focus on students and how they are doing and what we can tweak in order for them to do even bigger and greater things. During our part of our coaching process, we provide practice sessions as we go through the school year, so you are continually building your skills. We look at data along with you, lesson progress data and in-program data to make sure those groups are homogeneously intact. If you are also looking for more resources, you can take a look at the Tour of Resources document, part of your handouts. And in that document, it will walk you through NIFTY's website, where you will be able to find video in services on critical phrasing, how to correct mistakes, how to use a system, a thermometer chart, which is a system on reinforcing students for their academic progress at mastery. You can also find where you can get support for distance learning. Would encourage you, just take a few moments and poke around at NIFTY's website. Lots of resources there for you. as well as research for you so you can see and show other folks that direct instruction works. And here's the research and the data to back it up. Now, as you saw in that flow chart, we are looking at placing students, grouping students, purchasing material. That brings us to this slide. So if you are in the UK, here is your contact. And again, it'll come out to you in a PowerPoint slide handout. If you are not in the UK, go ahead and contact your McGraw-Hill education rep or go to mheducation.com so you can see how to purchase the material as well. And before I bring Brian back, I'm just going to say to you all, thank you so much for hanging out with us these last 2 Wednesdays. We so appreciate your valuable time that you've taken away from other things and have brought to us. And we sincerely hope that you walk away with a greater understanding of direct instruction and how efficient and how effective it is, and how we at NIFTY would be happy to support you in that. And Brian.
Tamara left me about 38 seconds. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. Yes, I'd like to echo Tamara's sincere appreciation for the time that you've spent with us, as well as your commitment to teaching our kids every day, and particularly during these, as they call them, challenging times. Want to make you aware of some things that you'll be receiving from us very shortly. I'll be sending you an email that will have a link to the materials that, if you've overlooked that materials link that we sent you earlier, materials for this session, as well as a link to the recording of this session so you can view it. That link will be valid for 30 days, so you can use that at your leisure. We'll also later post it onto our website. Also want to make you aware of some upcoming webinars that NIFTY will be conducting. We have 2 coming up. One on March 3rd on an overview of authentic direct instruction programs for teaching literacy skills. That'll be on March 3rd. And then the next would be on March 10th. We're doing an additional webinar on teaching, on an overview of direct instruction math programs, or as some people call it, maths programs. So we'd encourage you to sign up for that. Actually, a few people in the questions and answers box we're asking about upcoming events, and during this a couple folks did register for the event, so a little bit of buzz is starting on those already. Also included in that email will be that you'll receive from us within about a half an hour or so. There will be an opportunity to fill out an evaluation form, gives us feedback on how we can shape content of our future webinars. So please take the time to fill that out. There'll also be a link that is NIFTY is investigating, trying to get a needs assessment for training, particularly in the UK. So if you do us the favor of filling out that very, very brief questionnaire, it gives us a gauge to see what you might be interested in obtaining training on. As Tamara did just indicate, NIFTY is available to provide custom training for individuals or schools that are interested in having a pre-service type experience. Can't guarantee that we'll get Tamara in there to kick off her shoes and train you. However, we do have a number of excellent consultants with a vast breadth and depth of knowledge in DI. So keep us in mind for your training needs. We do sincerely want to help you in any way that we possibly can. If we don't have the answer, we know how to find the people who do have the answers. So please, we are your go-to place for all things in direct instruction. I'd like to wish you all a great rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever it may be, wherever you may be. And thank you so much for coming and attending this webinar today. Have a great day. Bye now.